Imagine walking into a bank with a giant sealed cardboard box. You tell the bank manager that inside this box is a pristine, ultra-rare collection of vintage toy cars worth $1,000. You do not want to sell them. You just want to leave the box in the bank's vault as a guarantee, and in return, you want the bank to lend you $800 in cash. The bank manager wants to be safe, so he opens the top flaps of the box. He peers inside, reaches in, and feels the smooth plastic of a toy car right at the top. Satisfied, he seals the box, locks it in the vault, and hands you the cash. But here is the secret. Beneath that very top layer of toys, the rest of the box is filled with heavy, worthless backyard dirt. You just took home $800 for a box of rocks. Now, multiply that box by millions. Replace the toy cars with salad oil, and replace the local bank with the biggest, most prestigious financial institutions on Wall Street. This is the story of how a short, chubby man who loved cheap meat managed to pull off one of the most ridiculously simple scams in human history, stealing over $150 million using nothing but water, a few pipes, and a basic science lesson you learned in elementary school. His name was Anthony de Angelis, but his friends called him Tino. Tino was not a financial genius. He was not a high-tech hacker. He was just a guy from New Jersey who realized that the smartest people on Wall Street are surprisingly easy to fool if you give them exactly what they want to see. By the time the dust settled, Tino's little trick did not just bankrupt legendary brokerage firms. It threatened to bring down the entire New York Stock Exchange, causing a panic so severe that the US government had to intervene to stop a total economic meltdown. And the craziest part? Tino's massive empire of oil was built on a supply of salad oil that was physically larger than the entire inventory of the United States. But to understand how Tino fooled the smartest minds in finance, we first have to understand the simple magic of the government sandwich. Back in the 1950s, the United States government had a major problem. American farmers were producing way too much food, especially soybeans. If all these soybeans hit the market at once, prices would crash and farmers would go broke. So, the government created a program called Food for Peace. The plan was simple. The government would buy up all the excess soybean oil, which is basically the cheap salad oil you use to fry food, and ship it to developing countries around the world as aid. This was a gold mine for anyone who could process and ship salad oil, and Tino saw his golden opportunity. He started a company called Allied Crude Vegetable Oil. Tino's job was to buy raw soybean oil, refine it, and ship it across the ocean. But shipping oil across the globe requires massive amounts of cash up front. You have to buy the seeds, pay the factory workers, and lease the giant ships before the government ever pays you a single dime. Tino needed cash, and he needed it fast. This is where Tino looked at the banking system and found a beautiful, glittering loophole. If you want to borrow millions of dollars from a bank, you cannot just ask nicely. You have to give them a guarantee. In the finance world, this is called collateral. If you borrow money to buy a house, the house is the collateral. If you do not pay back the loan, the bank takes your house. For Tino, his collateral was his massive inventory of salad oil. He had giant storage tanks in New Jersey, filled with millions of gallons of valuable oil. But banks do not like to get their shoes dirty. A Wall Street banker in a fancy suit is not going to drive down to a muddy industrial port in New Jersey to climb up a giant metal tank and smell salad oil. They need a trusted third party to do the dirty work for them. Enter American Express. Today, we know them for credit cards. But back then, They had a highly respected division that specialized in doing exactly this. They would guard a company's inventory, verify it was real, and issue official paper documents called warehouse receipts. These receipts were essentially golden tickets. If American Express signed a receipt saying Tino had $10 million worth of oil in his tanks, Tino could take that piece of paper to any bank on Wall Street, hand it over, and instantly get a massive cash loan. The bank felt totally safe because if Tino vanished, they could just hand the piece of paper to American Express and claim the physical oil. It was a perfect system. It was foolproof. It was backed by the most trusted name in American finance. Except for one tiny detail, Tino knew a basic law of physics that the bankers seemed to have completely forgotten. Oil and water do not mix. And more importantly, oil floats on top of water. One morning, Tino looked at his giant, towering metal storage tanks. Each tank was several stories high, capable of holding millions of gallons of liquid. If Tino filled a tank completely with salad oil, it would cost him a fortune. But what if he filled 95% of the tank with cheap tap water from a local fire hydrant and then poured just a thin layer of salad oil on top? To anyone looking from the outside, the tank was full. If an inspector from American Express climbed up the ladder to the top of the tank, opened the small hatch, and looked inside, they would see a shimmering pool of golden salad oil. If they lowered a bucket to take a sample, the bucket would scoop up the oil from the very top. If they smelled it, it smelled like salad oil. If they tasted it, it tasted like salad oil. The inspectors were satisfied. They climbed down, signed the official warehouse receipts, and handed them to Tino. Tino walked straight to Wall Street, traded those receipts for millions of dollars in cold, hard cash, and went on a shopping spree. But Tino's ambition was far bigger than just a few tanks. He wanted to corner the entire global salad oil market. He wanted to buy up so much oil that he could set the price himself and make billions. To do this, he needed more money, and to get more money, he needed more receipts. Soon, Tino was leasing dozens of empty storage tanks all across the New Jersey port. But he did not have enough salad oil to even cover the tops of all these new tanks. If the inspectors decided to check tank number 5 and tank number 6 on the same day, Tino would be caught red-handed. So, Tino designed a highly creative, highly illegal plumbing system. He connected all of his giant storage tanks together using a secret network of underground pipes and valves. He also installed powerful, high-speed pumps. Now, the scam became a beautifully choreographed dance. When the American Express inspectors arrived at the port to count Tino's oil, they would start at tank number 1. They would climb up, verify the golden oil, write down the numbers, and climb back down. While the inspectors were slowly walking over to tank number 2, Tino's workers would quickly open the secret valves and turn on the pumps. Within minutes, the thin layer of salad oil from tank number 1 was sucked through the pipes and pumped into tank number 2. By the time the tired inspectors climbed to the top of tank number 2, the very same oil was waiting for them. The inspectors checked it, signed their clipboards, and moved to tank number 3. And once again, the pumps roared to life, chasing the inspectors from tank to tank. The inspectors thought they were looking at an ocean of salad oil worth tens of millions of dollars. In reality, they were just looking at the exact same cup of oil, moving in circles right beneath their feet. It was the ultimate financial magic trick. Tino was printing money out of thin air. With his endless supply of borrowed Wall Street cash, Tino began buying up soybean oil futures on the commodity market. He was buying so much paper oil that the prices started to skyrocket. This made the banks even happier. The salad oil they were holding as collateral was now worth even more money on paper. They willingly lent Tino even more cash, which Tino used to buy even more oil futures. It was a glorious, self-reinforcing loop of wealth. Tino was hailed as a genius. He was a major player on Wall Street, a philanthropist, and a friend to politicians. But Tino's paper empire was growing much faster than the laws of reality could handle. At one point, Tino had borrowed so much money based on his fake warehouse receipts that he had officially claimed to possess more than 1.8 billion pounds of salad oil. To put that number into perspective, that was more than the entire physical supply of salad oil in the entire United States. If every single citizen, restaurant, and factory in America emptied their cabinets, they still could not produce the amount of oil Tino claimed to have locked away in his New Jersey tanks. Yet, not a single banker on Wall Street bothered to look at the national statistics. They were too busy collecting interest payments and celebrating their easy profits. But every bubble, no matter how shiny, eventually pops. And for Tino, the needle was a sudden change in international politics. Tino had bet his entire fortune on the belief that the US government's Food for Peace program would keep buying his oil to ship to foreign countries, specifically Spain and the Soviet Union. But in late 1963, the trade negotiations with the Soviet Union suddenly stalled. The massive government orders Tino was relying on never arrived. Without the government buying his oil, the market price of soybean oil began to slide. On Wall Street, when the value of your collateral drops, the banks do not just sit around, they issue a margin call. They told Tino that because the price of oil was falling, his collateral was no longer worth enough to cover his massive loans. They demanded that Tino either give them more cash immediately or they would start selling off his physical oil to get their money back. Tino did not have the cash. All of his money was tied up in the crashing oil market. Realizing the end was near, the banks and American Express finally did what they should have done years ago. They sent an independent team of inspectors down to the New Jersey port with orders to do a deep, thorough investigation. No more quick glances, no more simple bucket scoops. The inspectors arrived with long, heavy metal poles designed to reach all the way to the very bottom of the giant tanks. An inspector climbed to the top of a tank, took the long pole, and pushed it through the golden surface of the oil. He kept pushing. The pole went down 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. Suddenly, the resistance changed. The inspector pulled the pole back up. He ran his fingers along the bottom of the rod and took a sniff. It was not golden salad oil. It was dirty New Jersey tap water. The inspectors ran to the next tank, and then the next, and then the next. In tank after tank, they found the exact same thing. Millions of gallons of water topped with a pathetic floating layer of kitchen oil. In some tanks, there was nothing but water and a few dead fish that had accidentally been pumped in from the local river. The news hit Wall Street like a devastating lightning strike. The warehouse receipts the banks were holding as safety blankets were suddenly revealed to be worthless pieces of paper. Tino's company instantly declared bankruptcy. The financial damage was catastrophic. Over 50 prestigious Wall Street firms and banks realized they had lent hundreds of millions of dollars that would never be paid back. 2 major brokerage firms went bankrupt overnight. The panic was so intense that the president of the New York Stock Exchange, fearing a total collapse of public trust, made the unprecedented decision to halt all trading. To make matters worse, this financial chaos unfolded on the exact same weekend that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. The nation was already in a state of shock and mourning, and now the entire financial system was on the verge of imploding. Ultimately, Wall Street's biggest players had to band together to quietly bail out the ruined brokerage firms and restore calm to the markets. Tino was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison. But even behind bars, he remained a legend. He had fooled the most sophisticated financial minds in the world with a trick that a high school chemistry student could have explained. The Great Salad Oil Swindle of 1963 remains a timeless warning for anyone in the world of finance. It proved that no matter how complex the financial instruments, no matter how fancy the paperwork, and no matter how prestigious the name on the door, the biggest risk in finance is often the simplest one. Because if you do not take the time to look inside the box, you might just find out that you paid a fortune for a box of rocks, a bucket of water, and a very expensive lesson in flotation.